Sir Muir Gray is a physician like no other. At 81, he's lost none of his passion for finding ways to improve public health and the way we age. He received a knighthood in the Queen's Honours List in 2005 for his work creating screening programmes for the National Health Service here in the UK, where he served as Chief Knowledge Officer. Today, he is an internationally renowned expert on public health and healthcare systems and is a co-founder of the Oxford Longevity Project. He's also written a series of books, and their titles reflect his unique sense of humour, including Sod Sitting, Get Moving, and Sod 70, The Guide to Living Well, along with Midlife, Look Younger, Live Younger, Feel Better. And you're going to hear that sense of humour and colourful language that keep him true to his Glasgow roots. He lives and breathes his own messaging, and he's here to tell us in dynamic style how we can all live better for longer. Sir Muir, thank you so much for being here. I'm honoured to talk to a knight of the realm. That's a first for me on the channel, and also somebody who has made it their mission to change the way we age and think about ageing, and that's a mission that's close to my own heart too. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and it's great to have the opportunity to meet so many people. And I thought I'd just tell you the facts of life. Remember the facts of life? The birds and the bees, we used to call it, where babies come from. But I'm telling you now the facts of life 2.0. What happens to us is we live longer. And the science is now getting very clear that aging is a normal biological process. But aging doesn't cause major problems until the late 90s. You need a bit of luck, but look at people like Her Majesty, for example. People are able to do things and in their late 90s. But three other processes are taking place that affect us as we live longer. And the first of these is loss of fitness, physical and mental. And loss of physical fitness starts for most people about 22 when they get their first job.
Wow.
And you and I are doing this very dangerous thing called sitting.
Yes.
And we've not evolved to sit with lots of calories everywhere. We've evolved to run about and put on fat quickly if any calories become available. So the whole environment has changed. It's not lifestyle and people being lazy. It's just where the whole environment is different. So loss of fitness. And physical fitness, there's four aspects of physical fitness, beginning with the letter S: strength, stamina, suppleness, and skill. Now, the effects of aging, the biological effects of aging are twofold. One is the loss of maximum ability, maximum heart rate, for example. The second is loss of resilience, the ability to respond to a change in temperature or a trip or stumble or inactivity. Now, loss of fitness means a loss of maximum ability and also loss of resilience, how long it takes you to recover from climbing 3 flights of stairs. So loss of fitness and aging have been confused until very recently. But now the American College of Sports Medicine produced a big report saying exercise is medicine. And the British colleges of medicine said exercise is the miracle cure. So activity is key. Mental activity is also very important. And we might have a chance to discuss what we call retirement at present, although I'm changing the name to Renaissance. And the change that take place at that age. So that's aging, lots of fitness, disease, and most diseases are not caused by genetics, but by the environment we live in and how we respond to it, and therefore we can reduce the risk of disease. And disease is very often complicated by accelerated loss of fitness, because we do too much for people.
Can I go back and pick up on something that I think will surprise a lot of people that you started out by saying? You said the aging shouldn't be a problem until our 90s. Now, of course, most people would count themselves very lucky to make it to their 90s. The average life expectancy is considerably below that. So are you saying really that it is that loss of fitness, too much sitting, inadequate diet that has caused the key issues for us here? And really, we should be living to our 90s if we could reverse that situation, move more, eat better.
Yeah, but remember, the people, as I understand it, who are engaged with us now will be people in their 60s, 70s, 80s. And by the time you reach 60, the expectation of life for 60 is about 30 years. The expectation of life at
Yeah.
70 is about 20. So if we're speaking to people like us, I'm 81, then the expectation of life of 80 is about 10 years. We see, but there's the fourth factor. So there's aging, loss of fitness, disease, complicated by accelerated loss of fitness, and social factors. Deprivation, for example, is a major factor. And then the other one is ageism, the negative thinking. Oh, well, no, I'd like to disagree with her. She's 84. Or, oh, let's do something for her. Let's do something for him. He wouldn't. So ageism, which affects almost all of us, and which we have to fight, and which you're fighting through this your wonderful channel. You're an
Well, thank you.
anti-ageist movement.
Yes, I am. And anti-aging has become, there's a bit of a movement trying to push back against using that term. But I believe in that term strongly, as I'm sure you do, because what we're looking to fight is not the passing of our years, which we're fortunate to have, but the negative effects of aging, which if we do nothing, will completely
So
swallow us
I'm
up.
sorry, I was not clear. I've got a speech defect. I come from Glasgow. And that is ageism, ageism. I was
Yes,
talking about. That's
yes,
the issue, more than
absolutely.
aging.
From ourselves and other people.
But you're combating. You're an anti-ageism move. It's fantastic what you're doing.
Thank you. And what you're doing. I think ageism, we think about it in the workplace and so on, but of course there's studies that have showed that we can be ageist in our own attitudes, and that people who have a positive attitude towards aging and expect to live well for longer are generally the ones who end up doing that. So I think there's something like a 7-year lifespan difference between people who had a very positive attitude towards aging and those who expected that that would involve frailty, disease, decline, and had that negative attitude.
Yeah, that's why I wrote a book called Sod 60 and another one called Sod 70. In America, it'd probably screw it, So screw it, sod it. Income tax, bad weather, to hell with it. You've just got to get on with things. And
Yes,
we have
yeah.
to understand that aging it will have impact on us, and there will be some loss of, say, muscle strength as a result of aging. But most of it is due to the inactivity of modern life. And I say I don't like the word lifestyle. It implies we're blaming people. But if you are living in London and you're commuting an hour a day out to the outskirts and then sitting at a computer for 8 hours and then commuting back for another hour, you don't have a lot of time or opportunity for doing things. So this is the new world. And Daniel Lieberman at Harvard has been very influential. And he wrote a book called The Story of the Human Body. And he said that the genome we've inherited is from hundreds of generations of running about all the time and putting on fat quickly. But for the last 2 generations, that's not the right collection of genes. So scientists are now talking not just about your chromosome, but about the exposome. That's your relationship with the environment. Because the environment, physical and social, does have an influence on what happens in your cells. We're part of a system, a living system, with our environment, physical environment, social environment, and other people. So there's a different mood taking place now in top science, where it's not thinking, oh, we just need more laboratory research. We're now very clear that what you're doing, Claire, is a sort of modern well-being and health service, because the people who are with us today are the key people, not only for themselves, but also for their communities. And I'm sure all of you are doing something for other people in the community of all ages. And funnily enough, we now know that volunteering is one of the best things you can do to reduce your risk of dementia.
Isn't that incredible? And it's just that sense of purpose, engaging with others, mental stimulation, social contact, a reason to keep going, do you think?
Yes, there's a big article in JAMA, the Journal of the Association. It was the first editorial in the year 2020, and they always pick the first editorial as very important. And in the BMJ, it was actually the chief medical officer speaking about aging, healthy aging in an aging society. And in JAMA, there was a man called Philip Pitts, who was a very distinguished lab scientist, wrote something on a prescription for longevity. And you might think he'd be writing about what's going on in the labs. Mm. No, he said it's sense of purpose, strengthening relationships, doing things for others. So there's top lab science now telling us that it's in our own hands. And they say it's this very interesting issue of doing things for others, recreating communities that were partly destroyed by COVID. But also, I think we've been through 20 years in which we believe that what we need are more doctors, more nurses, more psychologists, all of them very important. But really, it's what we are doing. And this is why I have changed the word retirement to renaissance, because I am seeing people doing things, different things from 55, 60 on, often different stages in their life, making different contributions, sometimes paid, sometimes unpaid.
You put me in mind there of my grandfather, who lived until he was 91. He was just shy of his 92nd birthday. And for much of his later years, certainly throughout his 80s, he worked in an old folks' home. So in a care home. He worked there. His job was really the runner. He would pick up people's prescriptions and run them to appointments and help them up and down the stairs. And they would always assume that he was much younger than them. But of course he wasn't. And he did so well. We never thought of him as an old person, because he just had that younger spirit and attitude. And he got so much enjoyment from helping others, and also just the social contact, the chat. He was from Uddingston, so a West Coaster like you. But as he approached 90, of course, he had to retire from that job at some point. And when he was then on his own, he lived in a small flat, an apartment, and the decline was quite rapid. And that's one person, but I remember thinking even then, that was what it was all about. He just became bored.
Yes.
And he became tired of living because he was bored.
Yeah. I mean, they see the sort of thing we're looking at now is how can we say to people like him, well, why don't we do some sponsored walking to raise money for the library of the primary school?
Yeah.
Because the primary schools are short of money, and you can walk even if you can only not walk as far as you did. Let's do some sponsor, we're also looking at raising money for the World Wildlife Trust. So some altruism. Well, why don't we people in the 80s, to hell with it, we've made a bit of a mess of the planet. Well, let's do something for future generations. The other issue which I'm looking at, but I haven't managed to pull off yet, is competition. If you want to get the older people of Edinburgh and Glasgow more active, you say, well, let's make more money. If I was in Glasgow, let's make more money than those people in Edinburgh. Oh, those bastards in Edinburgh. Yeah, we'll get on the road. And every country you go in, there's these small towns or big towns. I'm sure in Canada and the USA and everywhere. Oh yeah, but we're gonna even within one city. I was in a city recently, and I saw a sign saying North Swindon, and then. So I just said when I was giving a talk, well, what about South Swindon? And the room came alert with. So I think altruism, motivation, competition, these are very important drivers, as well as the practical things like physical activity and diet and medicine. Because I've seen in my 50 years hip replacement, transplantation, pacemakers, chemotherapy. I mean, cancer is no longer a killer. It's not the disease we fear most now. In every country I know, dementia and social care are now the number one fear. But we know we can reduce the risk of dementia by 40%. So there's much can be done.
And what would you say the biggest things are to reduce that risk for dementia, which of course a lot of us do fear?
Yes. Well, there are the three main strategies to reduce your risk of dementia. Firstly, keep your arteries healthy. Because Alzheimer's, we have to think clearly about nomenclature, and the medical profession is often very confused about this. So, firstly, Alzheimer's and dementia are not synonyms. That Alzheimer's is a disease, or probably a set of diseases of unknown origin at the moment. That's about 60% of dementia is Alzheimer's. So the other 40%, then what you can do to reduce your risk of that is firstly keep your arteries open, exactly the same as for heart disease. It's a vascular problem called vascular dementia. Lots of mini strokes dotted about
That's right.
the brain. Secondly, protect your brain from harm. Not only the harm of traumatic brain injury, but also stress, too much stress. Some stress is very beneficial, but too much is not. Sleep problems, over-medication. Over-medication is a major problem that does affect some people's brains. And evidence coming in now a bit about air pollution. Another issue is inflammation and gum
Yes.
disease. When you're over 60, the dental hygienist is actually more important than the dentist, because your teeth may stay fine, but the jewels may fall out of the tiara if the glue comes undone. So
Yeah,
I
it's
always
that
advise
build-up of
people,
plaque, isn't it?
yeah, I always advise people, well, give your mum or dad a dental hygiene appointment,
Yeah.
because they work on that. So but it may be the the gum disease causes inflammation. So keep your arteries healthy, protect the brain itself, and then thirdly, it is this issue of engagement. Now it's partly doing crosswords and learning a new language or relearning a musical instrument, but it does seem that engagement with others and challenge. So I say to people, become a volunteer, or even better, get on the committee of a volunteer organization, because that's where the passions run high and the challenge is there. So those are the three things you can do to reduce your risk of dementia. And we're producing the second edition of our book, How to Reduce Your Risk of Dementia, based on the Lancet, which is one of the world's big journals, and they've had a commission on
Absolutely.
dementia, and chaired by a Scottish woman called Jo Livingston, now working in London. And so we
Fantastic.
now know the evidence, and we believe it should be made available to everyone. And I'd be very happy to do with you. Let's do a specific set of programs on reduce your risk of dementia.
Fantastic. I think a lot of people will want to know what a typical day looks like in terms of diet, exercise, and so on for you, and whether you take a stack of supplements or what it is that you do personally each day.
Yes. So I need about 8 hours sleep. I'm on 6 pills a day. I think that's part of it. I had a heart attack 12 years ago, and various other problems.
And forgive me my interrupting, but people will wonder, when you had a heart attack, were you kind of healthy living? You were
Yes.
already across all
Yep.
the health information. Yeah, but it just happened. Do you think that's a genetic predisposition?
Might have been, but funnily enough, I never knew a grandparent. All my grandparents must have died before they were 60. In the west of Scotland, there wasn't a long lifespan some time back. So I had a heart attack 12 years ago, and interestingly, and this is a problem of the NHS, it may not be a problem in other countries, but in the 12 years since my heart attack, I've had 400 boxes of pills and not one word from the NHS about diet or exercise.
Yeah.
So now I'm taking charge of that. I'm introducing digital prescribing and digital information. I've also got several other health problems. I suffer from a problem called CLAB. My GP hadn't heard of CLAB. I went in to get antibiotics for coughing. He said, CLAB, I haven't heard of that. I said, no, it's called coughing like a bastard. Everyone in Glasgow had it. Everyone who grew up in Glasgow before the Clean Air Act, a good cough was part of life. So he's now
Oh, I love it.
a better educated GP. My apologies to the viewers for Glaswegian sense of humour.
I will
Billy
pre-warn before we
Connolly,
come into it, but
yeah,
it's
Billy
funny.
Connolly
It's
is a
very
great
funny.
inspiration. So, so diet, I try to eat the Mediterranean diet's probably the best simple explanation of diet. But a bit more brown bread than white bread. That's the only change the Mediterranean diet. And then exercise. I try to do 30 minutes brisk walking a day. And I introduced a brisk walking app called NHS Active 10 for people in the UK. And it measures very quickly and very accurately how much, I'll just show you, how much brisk walking. So before starting my meetings today, I managed to get 11 minutes in. And so
Well done.
I'll be aiming for 33 minutes because this is international. 30 minutes of exercise of moderate intensity. But I did 31 minutes in my 60s, 32 minutes in my 70s, and 33 minutes in my 80s. Because every year you have to do a little bit more because of the biological effects of aging. And then I've joined a gym because I feel I gave up cycling because I'm on 2 anticoagulants and the roads are terrible in Oxford. So I feel my muscles have been, some muscle loss is inevitable, but most of it again is due to inactivity. So
Yes.
that's, and I've still got two big missions I'm working on. So I'm afraid I spend a lot of my time sitting down.
Yeah. And when you're in the gym, are you working with weights basically to
Yeah,
build those
strength,
muscles?
strength. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the superpower, isn't it, as we age? Strength.
yes. And your own parents are excellent examples of that. I know you've got strong personal
That's right.
evidence, which I hope you're sharing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the interest in what my parents are doing has really taken us by surprise. Because I think most of us over our lives have just anticipated that as we age, decline will set in and there's nothing we can do about it. I even in all the research I've done about aging and understanding that we can offset a lot of the effects, what I hadn't got my head around was that actually even in our 80s, and I've seen this in somebody in their 90s as well, we can actually reverse some
Yes.
of that decline. And that's what we're seeing with my mum, somebody who couldn't hold her back up because she had lost about 80% of the muscle in her back. Not through laziness, incidentally. I do have people who come on and say, well, why was she so lazy in the first... She wasn't. It was just, I don't know whether she was genetically predisposed to that. She's
No,
got
no.
strong muscles in her arms
Yes.
and legs, but the back went.
Yes.
And we never thought she could build that up. She was given resistance bands by a physiotherapist in the NHS, and she had a rowing machine. She tried everything. But lifting heavy weights, heavy for her, I mean, obviously not dangerous. She started out sort of lighter and is building up. But that is working like magic. So she could only walk for under 30 seconds, holding her back up at the start of the year. She can now walk briskly for over 2 minutes unsupported.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And that's just purely building up muscles. So,
Yeah.
I think showing people sometimes rather than telling, and that's why
Yeah,
I
sure.
like to speak to real examples. You're doing great work, you've got great knowledge, but you're also a living example of how this works.
Well, this is
You're bright-eyed and
yeah.
bushy-tailed.
So there's the
The walking cure.
walking book, and that's 30 minutes a day. Now, if you do swimming, that's great. But you got to get the breath going a little bit quickly. And
Yeah.
then I do the days I don't go to the gym. I do about 10 daily dozen, about 10 minutes for suppleness, skill, and strength. So walking is good for stamina and the strength of the legs and stamina, but you do 10 minutes or so for the upper body and for suppleness, skill, and strength.
So what are some of the exercises you're doing outside of the gym?
Oh, fairly
Walking, obviously.
straightforward. Yeah. I'm sure you've got people much better qualified than I to show this, but so you got to think about the core strength. So I lie flat on my back every morning, and I have to do that. I suffer from another condition more common in men than women, called stupidity. And I was running for the train once, wearing my reading specs, and tripped and broke, hit a lamppost, and
Oh,
uh, and then I went to London to the meeting, but I had to give up. I'd broken 7 ribs, five in two places. So
oh my goodness.
I
Wow.
I
Yeah,
have to
that
recover from that
hurt.
every morning. And then I think core strength is very important, as your mum is finding. Obviously arms and legs, and then suppleness. I think give people, encouraging people to give up Pilates, yoga, Tai Chi. Doesn't really matter which of those three. Alexander technique is also very good. So just building your own program, thinking of all your joints
Yes.
and all your muscle groups. And
Yes.
you can do
Yeah.
pretty good work in 10 minutes.
Fantastic. Do you take any supplements, nutritional supplements? Because this is something that we hear a lot about now, and I'm interested with all the research you've done. Do you take anything?
Just vitamin D.
Vitamin
Vitamin D.
D, that's the one. Yeah, yeah, but nothing else.
Yeah, nothing else. Having been brought up in a country without much sunshine, then I think vitamin D
Yes,
is in.
I take it too.
Yeah.
It's an absolute must here in Scotland. I'm interested, we haven't talked much about your career, but I'm interested really in what you saw in your years working as a doctor that drove this passion for healthy aging, and what you saw, what you identified was missing all those years that you worked in medicine.
Well, I was very fortunate. I was taught in Glasgow by a man called Sir Ferguson Anderson, who really invented geriatric medicine. But then when I did surgery first and fractured neck of femur for a couple of years. I was doing that. But then I began wondering, well, why are all these people, these women largely, and I did a survey of vitamin C, and in Aberdeen in the winter they had no vitamin C in their blood, and vitamin C is very helpful for bone strength. So I decided to go into public health, and in public health, when my training, I was reading a lot about population aging, and when I got to Oxford in 1972, I found that everybody was very interested in children, and no one knew how many old people there were in Oxford, and everyone was very interested in diet, but no one was thinking about physical activity. So one of my principles is to be where the action isn't. There's much less competition. You can get on much better if you work where the action isn't. So I said to my boss, I think someone needs to think about population aging. He said, well, on you go. But I've done many other jobs over I set up all the screening programs in the UK, for example, cancer screening and screening pregnancy and that sort of thing. So I've done many different
Gosh.
jobs, but I've had this long-standing interest in living longer better. And as I said, to start off with, we now understand the science very clearly. Aging, not a major cause of problems in your late 90s. Loss of fitness, mental and physical. Preventable disease, and if disease does occur, it's complicated by cellular loss of fitness. And then social factors. Deprivation affecting too many people, and ageism affecting us all. But
Yeah,
all of these
yeah.
things we could do something about. So that's what I'm doing now, is bringing together people from all sorts of different sectors. And we've called it Live Longer Better. It's not just living longer people want, it's compressing morbidity at the end of life. Living longer better. And there's a
Yes.
huge gap between the most and the least deprived in every country. So how can we help people who are facing major problems bring about the changes that they would also close the gap? And that will, of course, reduce the need for health and social care. So
Yes,
that's the
which is
mission.
we desperately need in this country. And you're saying that for those of us who are in our 50s, 60s, 70s now, life expectancy will change. Aging shouldn't be a problem until our 90s if we are doing some of the things that we have talked about today.
Yes, I mean, some diseases like Parkinson's we can't prevent, Alzheimer's, so you need a bit of luck.
Yeah.
But you should always be positive and always think, I can do it and I can help other people do it.
Yes. Why do you think? Because it seems to me, I'm not going to say quite the world over, but when I hear from viewers and listeners in Canada and the United States and Australia and across Europe, it comes out over and over again, certainly here in the UK. There don't seem to be many doctors. I know there's a new generation coming through who are starting to look at medicine in a more holistic way. But in general, like you said, people are not being told to prioritize diet and exercise. They're given the medication, off you go. They're treating the symptom, not the cause. Why is that still happening? Do we need to get in earlier in medical training, do you think, to start bringing this out and changing things?
No, I think we need people like you, Claire.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yep. A so-called health service is a disease service. It's responsible for diagnosing disease. What is the cause of your chest pain? Is it a cancer or not? It's responsible for acute care when you're unconscious or unable to move or having a stent put in. And it's responsible for starting the right treatment. But for preventing disease and for living longer, better with a long-term condition or more than one long-term condition, then we have to think of individuals and communities. So I think we're really rediscovering, and this is a very interesting article. I was quoted in the Daily Telegraph about 2 weeks ago. The International Monetary Fund has produced a big report on population aging, and it's saying that people who are 70 now are the same as people who were 53 in 2000 intellectually. And the internet's a very funny thing, and it's a very bad effect, I think, in many young people. But if you go back to 2000, what were people's intellectual stimulation? It was a newspaper which they bought because it agreed with what they thought already, and the BBC or the American television or Canadian news or whatever. So we had a very narrow view of the world in 2000. And the internet is the revolution. It's blown away the locked doors of libraries. And even more important, it's allowed the development of communities. So, for example, if you were thinking of Canada, there'll be a number of people in Canada who are living in isolation because of disability or whatever, who were born and brought up in Edinburgh. Well, you now could give them a walking tour of Edinburgh, and they could do it together and chat as they did it. Then they could raise money for their primary school back in Edinburgh. So I think the internet is of terrific importance for all of us, but only if people like you are making the good use that you are making of it.
So I guess what you're saying is it's not the job really of doctors at the moment to be focused on preventative medicine. They need to be trained to cure people who come in their doors.
There's a little bit of prevention. There's a little bit of prevention, but it's not the most important thing. The clinical input is not the most important.
Yes. But you are looking at kind of a prescription of activity.
Yes.
For older people. Would you like to see that integrated into the health service?
Oh, we're doing that, yes. In every country. I don't know about other countries, but Canada, I know there's good things taking place in certain of the systems within the US, Intermountain Healthcare, for example, Australia. I think we need to see that. And also in Oxford, we've developed something called the Oxford Longevity Plan. And I think you're speaking to Leslie Kenny about that.
That's right. And I can share that in the description below for people to take a look as well.
No, I think whatever age you are, let's assume most people watching are 55 plus. You need to understand, Eisenhower said plans are useless, planning is essential. You need to start planning for the future. And that means you need to start thinking, do I really understand aging and what's happening? Can I regain lost ability by getting fitness? Can I rejuvenate? How do I reduce my risk of disease or cope if disease has occurred? And that may mean reducing the number of drugs. And what can I do with my environment? And how can I help others? So I think we do enable people to understand what is happening and to start planning and talking. So if you're a member of a golf club or a bowls club or a bridge club or a church or a mosque, talking about things like, well, what do we mean by dying well as well as living well? Let's have a discussion about it. So it's knowledge and learning. That's the key.
I'm interested in your take on this one because we live in an age of biohackers. Are you familiar with the biohacking movement? Those
Yes.
people who are pushing the boundaries. They are living a more extreme health regimen. How healthy some of them are, debatable. But, they're aiming to live, well, some of them want to live forever, but they're aiming to live to 150 or longer. Is that fantasy, do you think? Or do you see a time in the not too distant future where that's going to be possible?
I don't think that would be possible. And the poor old world's in as difficult position as it is if we all bloody well lived to 118.
Yes, quite. we would we would have to be aging very well to make that happen. But do you just think that they are in some ways slightly deluded at the moment about the realities of biological aging? Because when you start out in your 30s, 40s, I'm a biohacker, I'm never going to age. Do you think going through the aging process that there is a gap between the reality and what you're aiming for?
I set up the Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, working in partnership with the wonderful McMaster University in Canada, and there is no evidence. So let's just wait and see what the evidence is.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting having people like that who are willing to push the
Yeah, sure.
boundaries, new scientific frontiers and so on. But yes, I think until we see actually how old they can live to, we can never really know if what they're doing is going to have any meaningful impact. Anything else you would like to cover in this time? Are there any big initiatives or tips that you want to pass on to people that we haven't got to yet, just before we wrap up?
No, I think you've been sitting, listening to me long enough, and I think you should now go out and do 10 minutes brisk walking.
Well, you will be pleased to hear that just before I was out in the park with my doodle, Drixie. He gets me out every morning.
Yeah.
Several times a day. And then this afternoon, I've got a little lunch. I'm taking my mum out to lunch to meet a friend. And then this afternoon, we're going to be doing our weight training together. So we've got a day packed with fitness and activity.
Yeah, no, but even more important, you've got a day filled with doing good for others, because what you're doing with this communication, and not just the thing you've done with me, but I think you are a health service. The NHS is a disease service. You are a health service.
Well, let's see if we can get more folks on board and running their own health services as well. We can't have enough people spreading the information. Thank you so much. I've so appreciated your time today.
Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sir Muir as much as I did. Not only is he an inspiring example of someone who's living well for longer, but he shares his message with such joy and good humour. And I'm going to link in the description to more interviews with experts around how to age well. You'll also find there a link to my website, honest.scot, where you'll find more information and advice around healthy aging and skincare. To make sure you don't miss out on future episodes and articles from me, be sure to hit subscribe or follow if you haven't already, and you can sign up below to my free monthly newsletter where I round up all my latest content and include a great giveaway too. Until next time, thanks for being here today.